This next section is going to be about the most important thing in photography, light modifiers. Light determines what we see. So the way you modify your light is going to in large part determine what the image looks like. Starting with these flashes, with no light modification at all, you've got the light coming out of a glass dome, it scatters all over the place, and there's really no control behind it. The first modifier that you've got, as we discussed earlier, are these reflectors. They do a couple of things. They take a point source and they scatter it, they focus it, so that your lighting is now uniform, coming out in a cone, which is really important. It gives you some kind of control over it. You can point it. It's still a pretty harsh light, because if you look at the inside of these reflectors, they're a shiny speckled aluminum, so the light coming out has got a lot of spectral highlights to it. Typically not what we like in invert zoology, because we need a soft light. So one of the first light modifiers I go for is a light sock. It is a simple stretchy white fabric sock that's going to go over the top of the speed light. I'll show you how that works. Turn off the modeling light so you don't get blinded by it. Okay, you want to secure the light in a stable place, because if you're squeezing and pushing this thing around, you don't want the light to fall over. So this simply stretches over the reflector. It's got a little elastic band around the outside. Easy peasy, just like that, no problem. Now we turn on the modeling lamp, and we've got a much softer light. And I'll show you by turning the modeling lamps. I'm going to grab my auxiliary remote, since we've talked about remotes. And I'm turning on the modeling lamp on the other one without the sock on it. You can see how this is a harsher light and this is a softer light on this paper lantern. You can see the ribs. That's a big difference, and it's all because of this little sock. Now, I shoot with these socks on all the time. I think they're really great. They do a good job 99% of the time. So that's a staple you're gonna use a lot. And if they get dirty, wash them. It's just a piece of fabric. The next lighting modifier that I put together is, we call the Bellows diffuser. Essentially, it's a paper lantern with a weight on it. The bottom is cut out, and it has a metal ring that holds its weight down. It's got a couple of cords that are shrink wrapped closed with a cinch on it. It's a very simple design, and I'll show you why it works. If I put a specimen down, here I have a housefly, big one, pinned onto a neutral gray background, sitting on a base to shoot. Now, if I'm shooting on this with my standard lights, those of you who do photograph would understand that you're going to get reflections on the ring, on the wings, and spectral highlights. It's going to be full of glare. One of the common solutions has always been to take a piece of transparent paper and tape it together like a cylinder and put it around the specimen and shoot down through it. That does soften the spectral highlights. The inconvenient problem with that is that you need different size and diameter cylinders depending on the distance you're shooting with your lens. So this is a very simple, easy way around that. What it does is you can place it over your specimen like so. You can draw the cords around the back of your camera. You simply draw the cord up to where you've got your lens there. So now your lens is shooting down into the cylinder, and the fly is beautifully evenly diffused. Light is transmitted through here and then bounces all around inside. So basically, you just have to put your lights in a general position, and physics does the rest. It is really hard to make an error happen with this. Now, the cool thing about this is, as you're moving, depending on whether you're using 100mm and have long working distance, or the 65mm and you've got really close working distance, as you're moving the camera up and down, the diffuser follows the distance so that it increases and decreases in size as you go. So it's a real convenient way to cover a pretty good range of size. Now this will work with the 65 millimeter lens at 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5x and anywhere in between, and the 100 millimeter lens up to about 1 to 2. At that point you're too far away to use the diffuser anymore, and we get into something called bounce lighting, and I'll get into that when I start demoing the shots. But this is the Bellows diffuser. Another light modifier that's very old are barn doors. These have been around for years. They're a very simple mechanical light modifier, and I'm going to show you how they work. This one simply clips on to the front of the reflector. It has two little tangs here that hook onto this ridge, and then a little wire that comes by and locks it into place. So if I put it onto my side here and put my wire in place, lock it in, I can now actually rotate the thing around, and it just sort of hangs out there. So the idea of a barn door, and I'll use the wall as my point of focus here. I'll turn on my modeling lamp. So my barn door will allow me to increase or decrease the field of my light. And you can see that on the wall, how it's shunting down, whether it's vertically or whether it's horizontally. I can close the plane in on my light. So see, I've taken all the edge lighting, all the bleed away. So if I have a situation where I don't want a whole lot of bright light coming off of the back of a subject or off to the side of the subject, the barn doors are a really convenient way to shutter that light. And lastly, that's cool about a barn door, we talked about increasing or decreasing the intensity of one flash over the other. When you have barn doors, you can do it electronically vis-a-vis math by turning this up or down, or you can do it sort of by intuition by crunching down the barn door a little bit. That stops your light down, and sometimes I don't feel like getting up and reaching over to the remote. I'll just turn the barn door down and I'll be able to turn my light down. Barn doors are something you really want to get a feel for. They're a really versatile tool, and you might find them to be helpful in a lot of situations. All right. Another light modifier, also very old, are called neutral density filters. What these are is these are filters that don't add any color or change the color of the light. They just decrease the output. It's like a shade. These were often used in the days before these types of lights came along that can tune down to almost nothing. So when you needed to get lower light output than your power pack was capable of, you had only two choices: move the flash a long distance away or put on neutral density filters. So I'm including them, although you probably will never need them with these lights. The way they work, there's a couple of clips on the bottom of your barn door, which is also your filter holder. There's two magnets on top. They simply clip in like that. It's so simple, but these will choke out a solid 2 f-stops of light. So because these things go down to 1.9 watt seconds, you'll probably never need these, but feel free to experiment with them anyway. Another really important light modifier is bounce light. Now, traditionally you can bounce light off a ceiling and off a wall. It's a great way to get a nice soft light. Sometimes you can't. This is a flash umbrella, and what it is basically portable bounce light. So what you're going to do is you're going to reflect light from this umbrella to your subject, and because you can angle the umbrella with your flash heads in virtually any angle, it gives you a lot more control over that kind of bounce light. Now these umbrellas are black and white, and we'll get into that in just a minute because there's a bonus here. So we're going to open this up, and then on your flash head you've got a spot for flash umbrellas. You have a hole here with a bolt and another hole in the back. So you slide the umbrella through and you just snug this little nut down, the little screw, and that holds the umbrella into position. Now if I turn on my modeling lamps with my trusty remote, I've got a bounce light coming off of my umbrella. Now, what you do in this instance is you're actually pointing the umbrella opposite your subject. So my umbrella is pointing out there, my subject is there. So I'm going to turn this one off. Okay, so now all of my light is coming off of this to my subject there. Again, it's a soft, diffuse light. Once you flash this, especially if you bring the amplitude up a little bit, you get some incredible lighting off of it. Now, that's it for the reflected umbrella. Now I'm going to tell you about the transmissive umbrella. Okay, so the reflective umbrella you saw also converts into a transmissive one. If you take, see the spines that are holding it, they have caps on the end. So you can remove these caps and essentially strip off the outside cover, and what you end up with is this. It's all white and it's transmissive. And so instead of using it as a reflector, you're going to use it as a little softbox. So you put it in here. Now a couple of key things. The closer you have it to your light, the less diffuse it's going to be. The further you spread it away from your light, the bigger, the softer the light's going to be. So now, when I put on my modeling lamp, instead of putting my flash away from pointing my umbrella away from the subject, I point it directly to the subject. Because I'm not reflecting off this umbrella, I'm transmitting through it. And this is a really beautiful soft light. It's much softer than the bounce light you get from the umbrella. That's a little bit harsher. So again, play with it, experiment with distance here, and you know what, you can also use the sock on this thing to really soften it down. So in times when you can't conveniently put a Bellows diffuser around something, this is the way to go.